How do you roll? I hope it's with that statement right behind me. Let love lead. That's how I roll. This is part 2. I'm going to share some more about my story, and I'm going to get to a few little excerpts from the book I'm writing. But anyway, another little topic I want to talk about, well, actually it's a big topic, is cognitive dissonance. And that is when you disassociate cognitively or with your mind from facts or truths or realities that you just do not want to face or accept or believe. And so I was raised in a high control religion, and then I went into that ministry for over 25 years as a volunteer. And now I'm out and looking back at it all and looking at people that are still in that church and people that are out. And there's often, to try to communicate back and forth, it's like there's this gap. There's this cognitive dissonance. And one thing is, people that are still in, many of them, do not want to hear about the history of the church. And they do not want to hear about the ongoing FBI investigation about the church. They do not want to hear about how the ministry is not what it proclaims to be. It's not a penniless ministry, among other things. There's millions and millions of dollars, and they are not what they say they are. And so, and that's just one example. But anyway, this cognitive dissonance, and it's when you see something and it's very clear to you, and you try to explain it to someone else, and they continue to deflect or reject, what's the point? It's because you might as well just let it go, right? It's cognitive dissonance. Now, I remember when, before I started into the work, I was a PE teacher, and I was the PE specialist for a K through 8 school. So there were 400 students, and I was the PE teacher in that school for 2 years. And I loved that job, and it was a good job. So when I felt this strong call to go into the work and left everything, all my dreams, you could say, all my dreams that I had for myself, career, wife, family, all those things that I had dreamed of, I just left those dreams behind. And I remember the last week of school, I told the faculty first, and then I shared with all my students what I was doing as best I could to explain this very secretive, unusual church and religion. And I believed it with all my heart. I believed it was the way. I believed it was the ministry, and that I had this responsibility to fill a place in this one true ministry. And I believe that. Well, I remember my office manager, she said to me, I don't think you'll make it 10 years doing that. And I never forgot that. And I was like, when I've made it 10 years, I'm going to come back here and tell her that I'm still at it. And so I had this competitiveness that I am going to prove that I'm right, and that what I believe is right and what I'm doing is right. All right. That sets you up for cognitive dissonance. And then another teacher, I had written this letter and put it in all the faculty boxes. This was before email was common. And so I put this letter, hard copy, in all their inboxes, physical boxes each teacher had, and they pulled the drawer out. And so they all got it. I put it in there the night before. They all got it the next day. And I remember one teacher saying, after she had read it, and she had a daughter that was in university, read it, and she said, my daughter read this, and she said to me, Mom, this sounds like someone who just is not sure of what they're doing. And that stuck with me too, because I am more sure about this than anything I've ever done. But when I look back at that, people were picking up something. And it's like for someone that didn't know me, knew nothing about me, and read this, and they picked up something. So I found that interesting, and when I look back at it all, because then as I went into the ministry, anytime things happened that would put little seeds of doubt, I would reject them. When I would hear about this man, William Irvin, starting our church, I'd reject it, and I had all the reasons for it. And anytime there were other people saying, well, how can you be the only church, and why can't you guys be married, and all these questions, and I had all these answers, and I was more focused on my answers than listening to what people had to say about their church or their belief or their ministry, or to tell me anything negative about my church. And I had all the defenses for anything negative said. And so, I did not want at all to see how what I was giving my life to was wrong. And in fact, there was this thing going inside of me that was actually, I was kind of proud that I had something that no one else had. And I was doing something that was so honorable and left all just for the gospel's sake. And so you start this, and then the people in the church uphold you and lift you up, and you feel like, wow, I am something special, and I wasn't any more special than anyone else. So anyway, going on to my first year, some things happened right away. Like, I went in because I had this joy to share the gospel. And I remember when I started sharing the gospel in what we call gospel meetings, very simple services where we would just, like 1 hour long services that two of us that were working together as ministers would share. And as the younger one, and in the first year, I was expected to be brief and just have a small part at the beginning of the meeting. And I remember just pouring over my Bible and on my knees reading my Bible and praying and writing notes and thoughts and just pouring my heart out with the joy I was discovering about Jesus. And that was genuine. It was genuine. I loved that. And I loved feeling the connection with people listening and an appreciation about it. Well, then I was with my first year, I was with arguably the angriest man I've ever met, and just a very, it was just unreal. Actually, I was just, the way I was treated and talked to, and the spirit I felt, it was troubling. And yet in the gospel meetings, he would talk about joy. And Jesus talks about in John 15, this joy I have, it's a full joy, it's my joy, and I want to give it to you, right? So I felt like I had this joy, and I loved feeling this joy when I would focus on Jesus and talk about Jesus. But then something, like right away, things just start, here you're with another minister that's preaching about joy, and he was treating me with anger, and there was well, in hindsight, it was very clear there was jealousy in the way I was being treated. So I'll give you an example. So here's an excerpt from my book that I wrote about in that first year. And this was a few months in to being together. And I never got any positive affirmations from him at all. So this is what I wrote. I discovered joy in the gospel story. I loved reading the Gospels, writing my thoughts, praying, and preparing for gospel meetings. And I did. We had 2 to 3 gospel meetings a week. I felt freedom and joy in sharing in the gospel meetings. I felt inspiration and connection with the listeners, but no appreciation and encouragement from my coworker. None, period. I distinctly remember one Sunday evening after a gospel meeting that first year. There was about 8 friends and the 2 of us workers at a home for a dinner together. In the course of conversation, someone mentioned something I had shared in gospel meeting that night and how they appreciated it. That felt especially encouraging, as I was never getting any kind of encouragement from my coworker. So yeah, it was like, wow, it feels nice. Right after the friends shared appreciation, This is what my coworker said. Quote, I could still hear it. Well, it was all right and good what Andy shared, but you don't get a dispensation to preach the gospel your first year in the work. Unquote. Everyone at the table went quiet. And I was ticked. I was hurt. And I was not happy. And that's what I wrote next. I wrote, there was an awkward silence and feeling at the table. I was not happy. I was hurt. Where did that come from? I remember just wanting to stand up, grab the tablecloth, yank it, and everything with it off the table and yell, if I don't have a dispensation to share the gospel, then what the hell am I here for? And then just walk away. I mean, that was like close to 30 years ago. I still remember that vividly because it hurt. So then, yeah, that's just like those experiences just like take this chunk of joy and suck it right out of you. It's like kicking you in the shins. And then a few years later, I'll share with you another little incident I wrote about. And some of you listening to this would know the name Dean Brewer. And so I won't go into that. If you know who he is, you know who he is. But he was my older coworker, and this was maybe 4 years, my fourth year in the work. And so I'll just read it. It said, one incident that sticks vividly in my mind was one morning in Alaska, that fourth year in the work. Back then, workers wrote letters a lot. That was a big deal. Like that was almost like like something that made you look impressive. I'm not getting the right word for that, but admired, a very admired thing if you wrote letters and all these letters. And back then, workers wrote letters a lot. It seemed the righteous thing to do. Dean wrote lots of letters. I had tried to write letters after starting in the work like my coworkers did. So there I was that morning in Alaska writing letters, sitting at a nook by the kitchen of the home that we were staying in. My mom supplied me with lots of fun smiley face stickers to use, so I was enjoying them liberally on an envelope that day. Dean walked by, looked down at my envelope, and said something about it being worldly, immature, and childish. I could still feel that stab in the back. Like, what in the world is wrong with smiles on an envelope? I was sharing and sending love and care in that envelope. Isn't that what we were giving our lives for? Things like that let me know that Dean looked at everything I did with a critical eye and with critical thought. That sucks, to put it nicely! ! So, needless to say, I didn't feel a lot of love, care, and appreciation from Dean. I was happy to be done with my year with him. So that's just a little glimpse of, you just feel like you're being looked at critically. And that there was, like, if people liked me or paid too much attention to me or showed appreciation to me, it was often perceived in the way they behaved to me. It seemed that it was perceived by them as I was a threat. And it's just that the joy just starts to get taken away piece by piece, and then the competition and the politics and Anyway, I'll leave it at that for today, for this part 2. But once you're invested so deeply, it would, like, I always made excuses. I always made excuses for being treated that way. Like, well, I would look at the David and Saul experience in the Old Testament and how David endured that. And I'm just going through trials and enduring them. But how much can you excuse away when these things happen over and over and over again? And the joy keeps getting sucked out of you. Anyway, I'm thankful to be free of that. I'm just sharing my experience. And I know that the deeper we get into a church it's our group, and it's so easy to be indoctrinated and then have this cognitive dissonance because we're afraid. We're afraid to see the holes in it because we've believed in it with all our heart and we've invested so much in it. How too big a thing to look at and think it could be wrong, or I could have been misled, or I could have been deceived. It's hard to admit. But anyway, it's okay. Because you know what? There's a lot of people that will love you and understand you. It's okay to question. It's okay to have doubts. And pray them out with God. Let him show you the truth. And the truth brings joy. And I lost my joy. And I'm experiencing joy again. And I'm just going to close with, because I'm going to say every episode or part or video I do, I want to the conclusion to always be love, because life is often filled with anything but love, or convoluted love, or conditional love. Anyway, so this is a poem I wrote about a year and a half ago. Well, yeah, close to, and I think this poem was almost ahead of where I was at the time, but I'm going to read it. And it's this. I wrote this poem, From Broken to Beauty. I got lost along the way. So many dreams, so many opportunities, so much love, so many blessings. How did I fall? How did I lose my way? Why? I'll tell you, it got dark. Discouragement introduced itself. Panic prevailed. Anxiety and fear united. I lost sight of the path. I found deceitful paths of respite. Cruel dead ends they were. Dead ends filled with guilt and shame. Sleepless nights of desperate tears. The path of blessing never moved. Love never forsook me. Prayers never ceased for me. I did not die. Hope remained. Regrets are real. Torrential tears of torment tore my heart. Somehow, some way, love lingered. Deep in my heart, love lingered. Love said, you are loved. Love said, you are forgiven. Love said, I will love you. I will lead you. You will love like I love you. Love is healing my broken self, my broken heart. I love, love. Love heals, love endures. Love kindly, patiently is leading me back from brokenness to beauty. Let love win. Let love lead. Love will prevail. And let's roll that way.